With that win for Red Bull, I think it's really good for Red Bull, boost their confidence.
His first podium of his career.
I think it'll be really interesting to see where Colton goes.
Just to grow F1 as a sport in America.
2023 it was Max and Checo that were 1-2, but Max was so far ahead of Checo that Max could have won the entire championship by himself.
The first episode of Sports Squawk. I'm Noah Holmgren.
I'm Leo Contento. Today we're going to be talking about F1 and just kind of the upcoming races, recap of Monza, looking at Cadillac. So probably start with the Monza recap.
Yeah, it's a pretty crazy race. A lot of change-ups in the front, especially at the start. A lot of back-and-forth battles, overtakes for the first 2 or 3 laps, and then it pretty calmed down for most of the race.
Yeah, it calmed down a lot once Max kind of got out there. Once Max is in clean air, I think it's kind of game over, even if the car, might not be up to the Red Bull standards. You got Max, who's one of probably the most talented racers of his generation. Mm-hmm. And with that win for Red Bull, I think it's really good for Red Bull, boost their confidence. I think their season's not been going the way they thought it would go. Mm-hmm. They've been dominant for this entire, regulations that they've had. So coming out with McLaren coming out on top really strong this season, I think was definitely a shock for them.
100%. And Red Bull started off 2 races in replacing Lawson with Yuki Tsunoda. That was a big change, and the second seat in Red Bull has to be cursed.
At this point, that second seat with Red Bull, I don't see Yuki staying at Red Bull. He hasn't really proven that he can do much, and for Isaac Hadjar, congratulations or unfortunate. He's most likely going to be getting that seat. There's been a lot of rumors this current week that Isaac has, in fact, signed a contract with Red Bull. I think he probably should have. I know for Red Bull drivers, if you get the call to Red Bull, of course you got to say yes. Red Bull's Red Bull, but I think the Racing Bulls honestly have a better car than Red Bull this season. So
100%.
Is it detrimental to his career to get into that car with Max, or will he be able to tame the beast like Max has?
I mean, Hadjar getting a podium in the Racing Bull is so impressive. And we saw what Yuki couldn't do anything close to that. Lawson hasn't done anything close to that. So Hadjar I think is either the best or one of the best rookies this year by far.
100%. I mean, last year, I don't know if you watched F2, but I watched a lot of the F2 last season with the battle between him and Gabriel Bortoleto. It was absolutely insane. Obviously, Gabby had some really insane races. It's kind of unfortunate. I honestly think it is really unfortunate that Gabby wound up at stake, kick Sauber. But, next year they'll be Audi. I think they're probably going to have a better machine, definitely better car. They have their own power unit that they're going to be using and developing. But I think if Gabby was also in something like that Racing Bull, we could see him somewhere. But we also know that Nico Hülkenberg took the green tractor all the way to the podium at Silverstone. Much deserved for him.
I love that race. Silverstone was definitely my favorite race of the season.
Oh yeah, it definitely 100%. It was such a good, just battle between everyone. Having Nico, once you kind of realized who DNF'd right in front of him. Was it Hamilton?
Yeah, I think so.
Hamilton DNF'd, and then, you just got, you have Hülkenberg there, and he was just able to take it and drive it steadily home. Mm-hmm. That entire race, I think, was his call as well. I know his pit crew really wanted him to pit, but he was consistently saying, hey, I want to stay out on these inters, I want to stay out. He knew his car, he knew where he could push his tires to. He understood how wet the track was and where it was dry, and I think that was all, that podium was purely all skill for him.
Definitely. He's one of the most experienced drivers on the grid, and the fact that his first podium of his career, his something 170th race, something along those lines.
So deep into his career,
just so deserved for a driver of that caliber. He's only been on midfield teams, never had a good car, and he's just been unlucky throughout his career.
Truly, he's had other opportunities to, get on the podium before, and just unlucky strike after unlucky strike to him.
Yeah, at Renault with Ricciardo as a teammate, that was probably the best car he's had.
Yeah.
But the fact that he was able to do it in a pickle-looking car.
Yeah, and a car that quite literally almost did not score a single point last season up until the last race. To take that car and take it all the way to the podium is really, really interesting. And, with it becoming Audi, I'm hoping next season they have a little more luck. We can shake up the midfield a little bit more instead of just having, kind of think they're always down at the bottom. But speaking of some new people and new teams for F1, we got Cadillac coming in next season. And I'm very excited for that. They, an entirely new team on the grid, 22 racers instead of 20, a little more chaos. I think it'll be really interesting. What are your takes on their signing for Checo and Valtteri?
I think they're good signings, obviously very experienced race winners, like both of them. Like, just the fact that both of them are essentially number 2 drivers is going to be interesting. So to see who they're going to prioritize as the number 1 driver versus number 2, because both of them, it's like Checo spent the past couple of years of his career being behind Max, and Valtteri, I guess he was number 1 at stake because Joe wasn't really there yet.
Yeah, but, he stayed behind Hamilton for his time at Mercedes, where he did prove, he's a really good race winner, he's got good racecraft, and I definitely think the move was right for Cadillac to take 2 experienced drivers to their team, because I think the development of the car is going to be really important for next year, and getting the feedback from drivers who have, been on the grid for, 10 plus seasons, less more around there. But just having drivers who really know what they're doing in the car, who know how to give feedback properly. I know for a lot of teams that have rookies on it, so like for Stake or like Alpine, for example, Franco Colapinto's been there, had some races last season, but he doesn't, his feedback isn't as much as like what Pierre's giving to them. Pierre's been on the grid for a while. He knows, how to talk to his engineers. He understands the issues with the car maybe a little bit better than someone who hasn't had as much experience in the car. But I think Colton Herta, having him on their bench, getting him in to a testing role and getting him his super license up, to get his super license points to get them. I think it'll be really interesting to see where Colton goes, because he's like 24, 25 years old. He's young. He's a proven IndyCar winner, multiple times. He races for Andretti, or he raced for Andretti. He now races for Cadillac. So I think it'll be super interesting to see what they're going to do with Colton and if he will end up in one of those seats. If they're expecting some Checo to retire soon or Valtteri to retire soon, because I don't foresee either of them wanting to give up their seat to someone. I know they're both really crafty racers and they both have a lot of drive. Is
Colton Herta American?
Yeah, Colton Herta is an American. I can't remember exactly. I think he's from California. His dad was involved in IndyCar, I want to say. IndyCar or MotoGP. I don't remember which one. I don't know why I can't think of which one it is. But, he's been around racing his entire life. His dad has been his race engineer at in IndyCar with Andretti. He's won a race last season. He's proved himself as a really, really good and talented driver to have. I think the only other person really on the IndyCar grid that I would be really interested in is Alex Palou, but that's just because Alex Palou, he probably had one of the most dominant seasons of IndyCar we could have seen this season.
Yeah, the one thing for Cadillac I will say is, obviously they do have Herta, but I was kind of hoping they'd come out with a American driver, just because, the first real American team, I know Haas is based in America, but they're not really American.
Yeah, they use a Ferrari engine. Cadillac will be using the Ferrari engine for the 2026 season while they continue to develop their own engine, but they do have intentions of using their own power plants for that.
Part of me was hoping they'd come out with, a Jack Crawford from F2, or as unlikely or as funny as it would be, a Logan Sargent. That would be hilarious. But just having an American come out of the gate to start with them, just for marketing purposes, and two, just to grow F1 as a sport in America. Yeah,
I understand what you're saying, and I think that's why they came out of the gate being Colton's gonna be our go-to guy. I have a feeling that this program is going to be centered around Colton Herta, his driving style, kind of getting his input once he's able to get into the cars, testing the cars. We're yet to see if he's going to be in F2 next season. That is an option for him if he wants to get some more super license points. F2 is a really good way for a lot of the drivers to build up their super license points. It'd be interesting to see him there just because F2 is typically filled with a lot of younger drivers in terms of the track that they go on through F1. So, Colton worked his way up through the IndyCar rings. IndyCar, you don't get as many points for your super license as you would in F1 just because IndyCar is not an FIA-sanctioned racing event, so you get your super license points through the FIA. You can get a couple of them for winning like IndyCar races and winning the championship, but it's nowhere near like if you just start a race in F2 and like I think finish in the points, you can get points to start your super license. So it's a little bit easier if he's in F2 and like really able to if he gets through F2 and gets those super license points that he needs next season. You could definitely see them taking him within a season or two to kind of bring that American to the team and really once they're established. I think I have a feeling this is my own speculation here, but I have a feeling that their Colton Herta timeline and the Cadillac power their power unit timeline are going to be fairly similar. So once they really have an all-American car with an all-American engine, you can put an all-American driver in there too, and you have a real American team. Getting all southern here. But yeah, I think this will be really interesting, and I think with the new regulations next year as well, it's going to spice up a lot of things. The rumors around the paddock right now are that the Mercedes engine is going to be really, really difficult to beat, and we know that they provide a lot of engines for a lot of teams, so it'll be interesting to see that.
Yeah. No, it's going to be interesting for sure. And, like, there were all those rumors a couple months ago of Verstappen moving to Mercedes for that reason. And I don't know if you saw the video recently of Verstappen racing in like what was it, MotoGP?
No, it was GP3. It was at the Nürburgring. He's racing. Well, he's racing to get his GP3 license, and he was racing in a detuned car, down 125 horsepower from the rest of the grid,
and had like a weighted brick in the back or something like that just to weigh it down.
Yeah, so that was another like interesting Max doing some side quests over this 1 week break that we have. But yeah, he's able to compete at the Nürburgring now. Fun fact, when he went and tested at the Nürburgring, he set the lap record within like a couple of laps of it. So once again, just kind of showing Max is that dominant driver that we know. Definitely won't happen, but it is still statistically possible for Max Verstappen to win the Drivers' Championship. That does involve Lando and Oscar DNFing a couple times and him finishing first in every single race for the rest of the season. But it's still doable, and I feel like with Max Verstappen, you can never count him out. You
can't count him out, and you also can't really count out the papaya rule stupidity. Because like as we saw at Monza, just some of the rules enforced by Zach Brown, Andrea Stella, part of me understands where they're coming from, but at the same time, just like your drivers are in F1 for a reason. Just you want to have them race. You don't want the race to be decided inside the pit lane. You want them to be decided out on the track.
Yeah,
and see who's the actual better, faster driver.
Yeah, it's obviously it's not Lando's fault or Oscar's fault that Lando had a slow pit stop. But at the end of the day, Lando had a slow pit stop. It's not Oscar shouldn't have to concede a position because that's what happened. I know the intent was never to have Oscar overtake Lando in the pit stop, and it was always for Lando to come out, in front of Oscar, but things happen in racing. Max Verstappen said it himself. If he had been asked to switch positions, he would have said no. And if at the end of the season, Lando Norris wins by 3 points, that's Oscar. That's the whole reason he would win is because Oscar decided to give him a place. But yeah, I think papaya rules have been difficult. I definitely think Mark Webber, being Oscar Piastri's manager, has a lot to do with some of the contention that they have there in terms of, a number one driver. If you notice, McLaren always says we have no number one driver, and I do think they play fairly fair with their drivers, except for I think last week was a little...
I mean, it's essentially making up for last year. I forget which race it was, where the similar thing happened, where
Budapest.
Lando was where Lando
was in
the lead.
It was Hungary. No, that is Budapest. Yeah. Same place.
Yeah, but like Lando was in the lead, and I can't remember off the top of my head what actually happened for them to call for the change.
So it's a little different, I think, just between them. The Lando call was a mess up in strategy by the McLaren pit wall.
Okay.
So, that they thought that it wasn't that the pit stop was long. They thought that the undercut, I can't remember if it was the undercut or the overcut, but they thought that the undercut or the overcut was going to be, larger than it was. And after Lando came out of the pits in front of Oscar, and because of that, the orders to swap positions. Obviously, Lando was a little contentious about that, but once again, I honestly think Lando shouldn't have given the position back. At the end of the day, it's racing's racing. If you end up getting a spot, even if it's because of a pit stop or whatever it is, I think they should be allowed to race and race well. Oscar had the chance during that race to overtake Lando, but he messed up a couple of times. Went into the gravel, dipped his wheel in a couple of times, had a couple snaps and lockups. So at the end of the day, it was nice of Lando to concede the position to him. I don't think he should have. And same thing goes for at Monza this year. I think Oscar should have just stayed ahead and let them race.
And at that point last year, Lando was still pretty far behind Max, but he was the next closest to fight for Max for the championship. And obviously Oscar and Lando are in the heated championship fight this year, which has almost ended up in a couple of crashes, which would be very interesting to say the least.
Yeah, I was going to say, they have crashed this season once.
Into each other?
Yeah, I think there was that at the end of last season or the beginning of this season?
I know in Canada, Lando, nicked him and then fell into the wall.
Yeah, that's what it was. I was going to say, they're coming to this. It's just, I think it's an interesting dilemma that I think McLaren is in right now, that you kind of don't really, you do reach at some points, 2023, it was Max and Checo that were 1-2, but Max was so far ahead of Checo that Max could have won the entire championship by himself.
I mean, I will say it's a good dilemma that they're in.
Yes.
Every team would kill to be in this position that
this
they're
is
in.
The best problem they could be having at the moment. I definitely think just their development throughout this entire the entire rules regulation that we've had has
100%.
Probably been the best out of I've seen any team. You did have in 2021 was old regulation. 2022, the car just looked bad. It didn't look good. 2023, I'll be honest, the car didn't look great. Get to last year in Miami, and all of a sudden the car starts to really look well. They had examined their car. There's obviously been some position switches at McLaren as well. I think Andrea Stella has actually done a very good job with McLaren and taking it to where it's gone.
100%. So just before we wrap up, who would you predict to be World Driver Champion at the end of the year? Lando or Oscar or Max by some miracle?
I'm gonna say Oscar. I only just because I think Oscar has a better approach. I think Lando is really in his head right now. I almost think that if they had let Oscar take that P2, it might have been a little easier on Lando. I think there's a lot of pressure, and I think if he's maybe drops back a little bit in the points, it takes a little bit of pressure off of himself to really be oh, I really have to fight against, Oscar and really get these points. And he can just kind of focus on driving, not, I have to beat Oscar. So I think unless, Lando's really able to get out of his head and kind of figure out, what he needs to do on, qualifying in Q3, there's been multiple times this season where Lando has topped the charts in, all of the sessions. He gets to Q3. Can't put it together. And that's a problem. He needs to figure that out. So just for those reasons, I'm going to say Oscar right now, because he's just been so consistent for the whole season and has really understood the car and, maybe not the fastest laps this season, but really consistent race laps. So really just once he gets out in front, once Oscar has some clean air, he's another really great driver out there. Yeah,
I agree with you. I would prefer Lando, honestly. But I think it's going to be Oscars, especially with Lando's DNF a couple races ago. I think it's pretty much out of reach. Oscar is just too consistent. I think he's going to pull away with it. Yeah, I definitely think it's an interesting dilemma with Lando's power unit as well. McLaren's been incredibly consistent for 2 seasons. I feel like it's been a while as well since we saw a power unit like DNF just out like that. So, I was really shocked, honestly, to see McLaren having some sort of mechanical issue like that, because I feel like that's more indicative of, a Ferrari problem. Or, sadly. Something like that. I think that's all the time we have. This has been the first episode of Sports Squawk. I'm Noah Holmgren. And I'm Leo Canetto. Thanks for tuning in.